everyone. My name is Maria Thomas, and I work for Allianz Research, the global team of economists, strategists, sector advisors, and foresight experts of the Allianz Group, led by Ludovic Subron. Welcome to Tomorrow, a podcast where we'll be talking about our latest analyses of economic and capital market developments, as well as our views on trends affecting risk management. Let's get started. Rising interest rates and lower growth are taking a toll on companies. In this episode, we find out more about the outlook for business insolvencies in 2023 with Maxime Lemerle, lead insolvency analyst at Allianz Trade. Hello, Maxime. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Maria.
So in your report, you write that the rebound in business insolvencies is picking up speed. How did things stand as of 2022?
Well, in 2022, we saw a rebound in business insolvencies in 3 out of 4 countries that we analyzed. And this represents more or less, or slightly more than a doubling compared to last year, 2021. And interestingly, this bounce back in insolvencies is not only spreading across countries, it's also gaining in intensity with several countries in all regions posting a double-digit rise. For instance, we have top rises in UK and France. We also had double-digit rises and important ones in Poland and Hungary, in India, in Australia, as well as in Canada when we look at the Americas. On top of that, we have also the rebound, which is, spreading across sectors. If we took the example of Europe, we have, in particular, a catch-up in sectors that most benefited from the state support measures that have been implemented during the COVID-19 related lockdowns, and more recently also with the energy crisis that followed the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. So in Europe, we saw largest increase in specific sectors such as the food accommodation services, such as the transport and storage sector, and also worth mentioning the trade sector. And to end with one sector, we should also add construction, even if the increase was less important than for the other sector. But, in all countries, especially in the advanced economies, we have construction sectors, representing 1 out of 5 insolvencies. And maybe last point regarding 2022 is the fact that we have seen more and more evidences of insolvencies of large firms. All the firms with, a significant amount in turnover or a significant amount in debt. And it was the case in France, but it has been the case not only US in the start of the year 2023. We saw here the strongest start of the year since the great financial crisis.
And now, can you tell us more about the outlook for 2023?
So for this year, 2023, first we already have the confirmation that the upside trend is ongoing. When we look at the first figures for January, February, and even for some countries for March, we see that the figures keeps on growing in terms of intensity, growing in terms of number of countries where we do have this rebound in insolvencies, meaning that mechanically we have a reducing number of countries with a low or a stable number of insolvencies. This is, the case just in China now or Brazil and Russia. That's where it's on the upside, definitely. And we expect the insolvencies to increase in all countries for this full year 2023, with no exception. And still a limited rise in Asian countries such as China and Singapore, but still large rises in the US, in France and Germany, and also in the UK, with again a strong increase, while it was already the case in the last 2 years. So at a global level, it means that our headline indicator would see a sharp acceleration this year with a 21% increase annually after plus 2% last year. And after for Memo, minus 14 and minus 10% in the previous 2 years, respectively. And this would lead half of the countries above their pre-pandemic level of insolvencies at the end of this year. And that will be not the case in Europe.
What are some of the factors that explain this outlook?
We don't have only one factor. We have several factors, at play at the same time and pushing up insolvencies. We have first the weakness in global demand and trade. Of course, fears of recession have reduced compared to the end of last year, or even compared to the start of the year. But in most countries, the outlook in GDP momentum is still well below the minimum required to lead to a downturn in insolvencies, and that's based on historical standards. And we calculated that Europe would need 1.3 percentage points more in real GDP growth to just stabilize its number of insolvencies in 23-24 in average. And for the US, that would be 1.5 percentage points growth that would be needed, again, just to stabilize the number of insolvencies. The second factor is our expectations of prolonged pressures on profitability, with first, the input costs to remain elevated, notably in the energy side. Secondly, the recovery in wages that we expect to persist. And third, to the tighter for longer financial condition, given the turmoil in the US and European banking sector. And this combination of factors is about to test the resilience of the most fragile companies, notably the SMEs, but not only, at a time when the weakening global demand will reducing firms' ability to pass on price increases to customers. So, and the factor we already saw last year that our cash burning index turned negative in many countries in Europe, but also in the US.
You mentioned that one of the factors is tighter for longer credit conditions. So what could happen if credit crunches further?
So definitely a financial crisis will act as a catalyst for insolvencies. So if we do a replication of the great financial crisis, based on the differences between the final outcome in terms of insolvencies for 28 and 29 and the forecast that we made for the same period prior to the outbreak of this great financial crisis, then we would end with our insolvency forecast to be boosted by a double-digit points. If we want to make it more practical, it would mean in number of firms that we would have more than 20,000 extra insolvencies in the US. And for the Western Europe, the number will be even bigger, because this would mean that we would have 100,000 more insolvencies than what we currently forecast for Western Europe for the coming 2 years. But even without a large financial crisis, that the one we had in 28-29, credit crunch would lead to additional insolvencies anyhow. In case of just of a credit squeeze, that would lead to stop new loans growth, we would see more than 10,000 extra insolvencies in the US and more than 45,000 extra insolvencies in Western Europe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find the full report we just spoke about on our website. We'll leave a link in the show notes. If you'd like to discover more of our research, you can also follow the Ludonomics newsletter on LinkedIn. We'll leave a link down below for that too. If you like the podcast, please send it to any of your friends who might like it too, and leave us a rating and a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. In the meantime, stay tuned for the next episode.